Hi, I'm Gary Hevel, and we're looking at developing an insect collection, starting a bug collection. So this point of it is daytime collecting. There's various methods of that for the collector to go out with an insect net instead of chasing around with butterflies like a fool. It depends on what you're looking for. You can chase butterflies, or if you get more into entomology for a biodiversity project of any kind, one of the ways of collecting small insects and sometimes medium-sized insects is doing what we call sweeping or beating vegetation. So I just take an aerial net for this purpose and sweep upwards on kinds of vegetation, in this case Jerusalem artichoke. I know that there's certain little flies and small bugs like this that might accumulate. So I do this a bit of time, number of sweeps. Then I grasp the bottom of here, thinking that there's going to be a lot of wonderful insects inside. Grab a cyanide jar out and put the catch into the cyanide jar. So sometimes this is very successful and sometimes not, but after a number of tries like this, things do accumulate, some of which doesn't really get into the cyanide jar. But it's a great way to accumulate insects over a period of time. The other things that can be beaten are simply or swept or simply grasslands. This has recently been mown here, but pulling the insect net over the general grass of any suburban yard, despite not seeing anything, will often bring a lot of flies, leafhoppers, and such into the net. So in this time, instead of jarring, I think I'll just hold this up and let's take a look at it so you can see that there are a good number of things flying here that perhaps are a surprise to the general person walking by. A lot of leafhoppers, true bugs. Here's a beetle that is of interest, so I will keep it. But it's amazing the numbers of insects, specimens as well as species, anywhere you look except the Antarctic. I always carry a little vial in my pocket just in case. This is a little leaf beetle that I don't know that I've ever seen before. I don't know for a fact that I've ever seen it before. So good, you never know, and that was simply from the grassland here, gracious. More success usually is into heavier vegetation and taller vegetation in the sunshine or in the shade. So in this case, next to the Malaise trap here is some vegetation. One has to be careful about doing sweeping of an aerial net and not getting into brambles and vines like this raspberry set here. That will tear and stop an insect net very fast. So about the same thing, a lot of jumping insects here, most of which I've seen before, I'm sure. Little flies, little beetles, a spider or two. So it's a great way of gathering a lot of different kinds of insects very fast. Sometimes a person can gather more insects of more interest on tree leaves, branches, bark. So this is a nice oak here. Oaks have a big reputation for having galls all over them. I don't see any at the moment, but this is a nice tree bark here, and these are simply branches that a person could do the same thing with in a way of beating, looking for insects this way and see what drops out into the net. But the other way is to carefully look at the bark of an oak tree and see what might be there. And sometimes it takes quite a bit of patience. What a person looks for when they're chasing insects this way are color patterns or shifts on different changes in the color. So this is a little hopper that actually hopped in front of our very eyes. But they're resting just like that in the daytime to get out of the heat and such. So often there's a lot of insects on the bark, and sometimes at night too. It's fun to look at old logs like this and branches that have fallen. There's always things under the bark and very interesting items in the way of beetles in many cases. Here's another different species of hopper than we just saw here. Light green, so he's not a very good camouflage there. But most insects that are on bark are dark and look very much like the bark, so it's difficult. One of the things I've read recently are collectors going to a tree like this and hitting this tree base of the bark this way. And in many cases there's a kind of underwing moth that flies away in about 20 feet or so, and then the collector is able to recognize where they stop and go up with a jar and capture them better. So there's all kinds of methods and techniques of collecting, and you can read about these, you can experience them, you can develop your own interest on what you're looking for. Sometimes there are more insects on small saplings like this of this oak than there are the main tree itself. So there's many things to see and find out about that way in the daytime collecting, and you'll learn more as you go. Next we'll look at nighttime collecting.